It's good to be the king.
Man. Let's do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the John and Pete Show. I'm proud to say with us tonight for our inaugural voyage, platinum producer and all-around country gentleman.
Yeah.
The great James Earley.
Happy to be here, guys. Thank you so much.
Show
Man,
was awesome.
The pre-show was awesome. The pre-show consisted of us hanging out with James, talking about the state of affairs while we get this thing launched. Just to start off, a little something to our band leader, Corey Jacobs. Our very first guest was, if you grew up in Vallejo, California, we knew that James Earley was super bad.
Super bad.
And your reputation preceded you, but the funny thing is, when I finally met you, I had an amount of reverence for your reputation because of all the great things that you've done. And so for our listeners to get familiar, you are responsible for something in the neighborhood of 50 million records.
Wait. Hold on. How many?
50 million records being sold to the
Wow.
general public. Approximately mid 20 million being your work with MC Hammer.
Yes,
20
absolutely. And I mean, I'm shocked myself. I have to pinch myself sometimes, but it's great. I'm honored and really happy to know. But thankfully, we didn't really even get to know that the sales were building up that fast because we were on tour at the time. We're busy. So we didn't know. I mean, we would be out on the road and they would say, hey, your song is like 500,000. And then it seemed like only a couple of weeks later, it was at 1 million. And then it just kept growing and growing. Our sales would go up. And so we were blessed and thankfully working so much, we didn't really have time to count the seconds. And it all seemed to happen really fast for us.
So as you're hearing your chart results and the record's doing better, you are having to worry about tomorrow night's show, tonight's show, whatever it is. You're worrying in real time about the work that you're doing right at that moment. So it's not something that you could just sit and digest. Wow, look at all these records we're selling because, hey, the bus is leaving in 10 minutes.
Right. And I loved it because of that. And, the pressure. I learned that I work best under pressure. It's very weird, but I really enjoy being under a lot of, even today, I guess I'm a multitasker because I really appreciate having to have deadlines and get things done. I think I do my best work under those circumstances. But yeah, we were in the studio simultaneously preparing for a tour, traveling by plane and by bus and everything else you can imagine. And plus doing television appearances as well.
So let's give our listeners a macro level view of your contribution. We were talking about Hammer. You were in early on within Vogue. You've worked with the likes of B. New Kids on the Block. Who else? Give us some names of the folks that you've encountered along your journey.
I really enjoyed working alongside E40 and the entire Click family. E40, Be Legit, D-Shot, and Sugar T. First time they went in the studio ever was with me.
Wow.
And, to this day, we're their family. Yeah. And I'm family to them. We hug when we see each other.
Sure.
And, it's great. And,
Everybody hugs when they see James Earley.
I'm really, really proud of all of them, including Hammer. I mean, because we were all kids when this began.
Right.
And we didn't know what was going to happen.
Right.
We were young, scared, all of us, young guys and gals, not knowing what was going to happen. And to have it blossom into what it's become is, even today, as I said, I have to pinch myself because it's like, wow, I can't believe that this really happened. I'm humble, and I always have been, and I think that's part of my nature, but it's important to be that too. It keeps you from losing yourself.
It is part of your nature. You are humble. But let's not forget, like, you've worked with Mark Wahlberg, Sly Stallone, David Bowie. I mean, I've not said a tiny person at all in that entire thing.
But you've also worked with a lot of brand new artists.
Yeah.
Whose careers you guided. I mean, all of those people, with the exception of guys like David Bowie, are people whose careers you guided from the beginning. Like you said, the first time the Click went into the studio, the first time Earl Stevens stepped to a microphone, was in your tutelage. And I can attest to the fact that there was a time in Vallejo, which has always been an incubator of music, in the late 80s, early 90s, where if you were a recording artist, the best thing that you could do was meet James Earley. And we all knew it. And like I said, your reputation preceded you. And tell us, your first record with Hammer was Hammer's first full-fledged album, right?
Absolutely.
So even before that success, though, the whole town knew you as an amazing bass player. Mm-hmm. So we've looked at the macro, but let's start from the beginning. You didn't grow up here in the Bay Area. You grew up in Los Angeles, is that right?
Well, actually, I did grow up here in the Bay. I was born in Oakland. Oakland is my hometown, but raised in Richmond, Vallejo, Oakland, Berkeley, just all over, really.
Okay.
Going to school in all of those cities. And I'll go back. What happened is because Vallejo's always been home. And that's my connection to Vallejo. It's always been my real home because my grandmother and grandfather are from here, and they worked at Mare Island forever.
Okay.
And so they raised my mother here. And, as a child, for vacations, Christmas, Thanksgiving, summers, we would always come to Grandma's house. It was the hub. And so Vallejo was always special to me, but ultimately we lived in Oakland, and then, like I said, moved around to different places in the Bay. And my mother got into being an actress. She became an actress when I was a child.
Okay.
And so I was like, wow, she's doing, TV commercials, modeling, all of this stuff.
Your mother has a very, very polished presence.
Yeah, she's the queen. She just amazes me. She's my original music teacher and all of these things. But when I was a kid, she got, after teaching me instruments just by playing them in front of me, she got very early in my life, she became an actress and began working a lot in San Francisco. A lot of television work, movies, TV commercials, modeling, print ad, all that. She was doing it and was very successful. And then at some point, I would come with her to the set. My younger sibling, Jacques, would come, and as well as my older brother and sister would come. And so we were all at the set, sometimes just hanging out with my mom. And eventually, the agents saw us. And they were like, "Oh, this is your family. You're a beautiful lady, and your kids are kind of, good looking. I guess we look like cute kids." So they invited us to do some work as well. And so we started working as well. We started doing television and print ad, all that as well. And again, I'm like 5-6 years old doing this and just like, whoa, this is trippy.
This is classic James Earley humility because you are
right.
Approaching 50.
Yeah,
you're a good-looking man.
I'm trying to be.
He's like, I guess we were cute kids. You got a nice-looking family.
Well, it blessed, but it's still humble, man. But we enjoyed it. We were hanging out, and I was intrigued by it. I've always been a technical person, even as a child. So I was like, wow, look at these cameras and lights and action. This is kind of cool. And so we just got into it. So anyway, what happened is we were doing our thing, and working a lot. I mean, I was missing a lot of school in a good way. It was great because you could get out of school and be on a film set and then come back and tell your teacher and your class, and they were like, whoa,
you were out because you weren't working.
Yeah, you weren't ditching, you weren't sick.
You were actually in real school.
You were doing, in life school, doing some stuff. And then also you're going to see what I did on TV. So it was like we were already superstars in school. It was great. And so anyway, we got so busy. My mom was working. She did all the Dirty Harry films with Clint Eastwood and just a ton of other stuff. And by then, it was kind of like people were telling us, you need to move to L.A. There's so much work out there.
Okay.
You guys will do great out there. So we were like, okay. So we packed up, moved to L.A., and I wound up growing up in Los Angeles. So
how old were you when you moved south?
I was probably about 9 or 10 years old.
No
when we
kidding.
moved to Southern California.
Okay.
For the work.
Sure.
We didn't really want to leave. We loved the Bay.
Yeah. Right.
But again, it was about we could find more work. So we moved to LA and we wound up doing the same thing a lot more. And Jacques really started doing a lot of work, my younger brother. And it was great just growing up in Los Angeles because we wound up going to school with we're riding the school bus or riding the city bus, but we're actually running into famous people all the time, or you're going to school with the child of a famous person, or even a person that would be famous one day and you didn't know.
Right.
This is your bro or just some girl that's really cool, and all of a sudden she's a star. And so it happened a lot. And so anyway, for my years in school in L.A., I'm still coming back to Vallejo, though, in the summer times. You know what I mean? Holidays, we're coming up to see Grandma. It's home. But back down to L.A. and
this really plays into how your personality in Vallejo got so big, because I remember knowing, if you are a young musician, man, James Earley, everything was James Earley, and this was before you really, the success we know you for now really broke.
Yeah.
But to our generation, and until now, I really didn't understand completely why, aside from the fact that you are, at the time, we knew you as just a smoking bad bass player. Your cult of personality grew because of all of this, really.
I think so. But I didn't know it at the time, but I'm just living and soaking up what I could get. And I'm in Los Angeles, and right about that time when I'm in high school now, I started to pull back. Fairfax High School in Hollywood. And I start to pull back from the acting thing because I'm just having so much fun in high school and just being a kid and also getting into music heavily. I kind of got tired of the cattle calls and the film stuff. I did. I mean, I saw that you could go one way with that, but I said, I kind of just want to be a kid. I really did. I'd already spent a good 6, 7, 8 years or more
paying into that craft.
Yeah, and decided to pull back. You know, Jacques continued to act, but I just pulled back. My mother was still acting as well. But anyway, this band from Vallejo, though, Confunction, I'm hearing about them, and I'm like, oh, this is a great band, funky band, great songs, and they're from Vallejo, young guys. I was like, oh my God, from Vallejo. And at that time, nobody in LA knew where Vallejo
even existed.
You wouldn't even find it on the map if you were trying to save your life. So I'm hearing about it, and I'm intrigued about this group, but I hadn't met any of the members. I didn't know, even though Vallejo's a small town, I didn't know anyone that knew anyone from Confunction.
Wow.
So I'm just a fan.
So
in
this
Los
is
Angeles.
the late 70s, approaching 1980, around there.
Right. And they're at their peak already, having great success. They're actually selling gold albums after gold albums and even platinum. And so at that time, like I said, I'm really getting serious about my music. So I started to get into some garage bands. I'm jamming with other kids and stuff like that and going to school. And I'll just tell you this: I'm at Fairfax High School, and I'm in the orchestra band. You know, I'm actually playing snare drum and reading music, looking at it. Okay, and then also I played upright bass. I would switch back and forth, and I remember bringing my bass guitar in there, but of course I wasn't playing that in the band. It was upright bass, but I would have it, and then after class I would go outside and just pull out my guitar. The chicks loved it
and riff.
And I'm riffing. I'm just sitting there. I'm not even plugged in. The chicks are like, "Ooh, look at James. He's kind of hot." I'm like, "Yeah, what's up?" So, but
doing, baby?
Yeah, I'm doing my thing. But there was some phenomenal musicians there, but there were also some people that weren't yet phenomenal. And I remember one of my band colleagues. I'm talking about an orchestra band. A cat that was playing cornet, and I remember him. I remember just seeing him in my mind. I could see it. His name is Michael Balzery.
Yeah.
He would come up to me and say, "Whoa, man, that's so cool. How do you do that?" Because I'm slapping. I'm doing the slap thing on the bass.
Right.
And I'm like, it's so easy to me. Even then, it was easy to do. And I'm just. It's like percussion on the guitar, But you're hitting the strings and making a sound. He's like, "Well, let me check that out. How do you do it?" And I showed him. And then, long story short, Michael Balzery went on to become Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And I'm like,
love that story.
And look at this guy. I mean, he's so phenomenal. Yeah, there was a band called Anthem at Fairfax, and these guys were an awesome rock band already. Flea wasn't yet in the band. He wanted to be, but they had a bass player. He just would hang out with them. But Anthony Kiedis was in the band and a bunch of other guys, and they were phenomenal. And I remember Michael Balzery, he would hang out with them, and then eventually their bass player quit. And then he joined the band. I'll never forget when he joined the band because the sound kind of changed, and he was like
It got funkier
almost right away. And then they just, of course, after school, after they graduated, man, just went on to mega fame. Look at those guys.
Yeah.
Can't be a bigger band. That's huge.
And the staying power, too, of the Chili Peppers. They just went into it because when they first hit it, they were the young band that was just kind of unruly, and they were playing, all the shows where the skaters would hang out.
Yeah.
And they were unruly.
Yes.
And look at them now.
Look at them now. And then, kudos to those guys. But another famous rocker also came up with us, and I got to tell the short story for that. He was a kid that I met actually when he was in junior high. I met him because our drummer in our band was still in junior high, the garage band that I had, my circle of friends.
What was the name of that band?
We had a couple of different names. We we started off as Mercury, and then we switched it to Class with a K. That was our thing.
Okay.
And we were a good band. There was a couple of good bands there, but that was our deal. And we were, anyway, our drummer, he was in the 9th grade, and then at that time, 9th grade was still middle school.
Right.
And so he's, got this phenomenal guitar. We wanted a rock guitar player in the band that we had, and we, didn't really have that at Fairfax. We, everybody was already taken.
Okay.
But there was this kid that was 15. His name was Saul Hudson, phenomenal guitarist. And we were just like, when I heard him, I was like, wow, this guy is like a child prodigy. It's just crazy. He had the long hair. He was a cool dude, riffing, and he was thrashing, but in a cool way. He trained in blues, but he was into rock. So he was able to use the blues scales and just do a lot more than most were doing, especially at 15 years old. Just phenomenal. And so he joined our band and played with us for at least a couple of years.
Here it comes.
And it was just, and I was at the time playing guitar in that band. I wasn't playing bass because we had another cat that he was in our circle. He played bass too. And I was like, and we didn't have a guitar player at the time, even before Saul had came.
So you were filling in.
I played guitar.
The need.
We had a bass player, but we wanted the rock edge, like I said. And with Saul, with Saul, we had that. He came into the band, and so now we had 2 guitars and a bass and drums, and we were a cool looking band. We were rocking out. It was great. And so anyway, I'll never forget. One day, this kid Saul comes up to us all and says, "Hey dudes, I don't want you to call me Saul anymore." And already we're like, is this a joke?
You're in the 9th grade.
I'm waiting. Yeah.
What do you want us to call you?
Yeah. I'm waiting for the punchline, And he's like, I want you to call me Slash. And we're like, what? It was hilarious. We belly laughed in front of this guy. He was our bro, though. We weren't really laughing at him, but it was just funny to hear a friend introduce his nickname, and expect you
and
to
he was done with his old name.
He was absolutely done with it.
The name his mama gave him.
He was serious. I just want you to call me Slash. And it was just so funny because it was just abstract and random. But anyway, we respected him.
Yeah.
And look who's laughing now, though.
Right. This guy laughing now. Slash. I want you to call me Slash. And do these leather pants make my ass look big?
These leather pants make my afro look big.
He was always so cool, though. He had groupies then. It was funny. He walked around.
Well, he's such a unique looking cat. Yeah. To say that was coupled with already developing chops in the 9th grade.
Phenomenal. He really, to me, he played better then because there was nothing in the way of, he was just into guitar.
Right.
And he was well studied. This guy was showing me licks, and I was older than him by a year or so, but he was phenomenal. And so anyway, we stayed a band. We had some success locally. We made our noise and certainly got our girlfriends and all that stuff.
Right.
But after graduation, guys kind of go their separate ways.
Yep.
No big deal. And I wound up leaving Los Angeles and moving back to the Bay. When I got up to the Bay, I'm still in touch with my friends from LA, but I'm living my life and trying to, make my way. And eventually I got into Solano College up here.
Right.
Solano Junior College. And I'm going there. And I remember one of my friends from LA called me and said, hey, James, man, turn on MTV right now. I was like, what? He sounded like something was wrong. I'm like, everything okay? He's like, no, just turn the TV on now. I turned it on. He's like, look who's playing the guitar. And I'm like, oh my God, it's Saul Hudson in a band called Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
And they just had that mega fame.
And the rest was history because that
was it.
Yeah. There was no slow building up of his career.
No, right away, just bam. And so for me, these were huge turning points for me because when I saw my dear friend and colleague go from just being a high school kid to being this world star really fast, with Welcome to the Jungle and all those hits that they had, I was just like, wow, you can actually make it.
You can actually do it. Yeah.
And when that happened, I made it my life's mission to make something happen in my career.
Sure.
And I was blessed enough, man, to simultaneously come to Vallejo. I wound up getting a job in Marine World. I'm like 20 years old. I'm like scared.
This is hilarious to me.
And I worked at Orchard Supply Hardware.
James worked at Orchard Supply Hardware.
Yeah.
And he washed elephants or whatever he did.
Yeah, and Marine World at the time. Now it's Discovery Kingdom or whatever. But I'm there, just making my minimum wage and happy to get it, just enough to get gas money in my car and be able to, flirt with these little girls around here. And so I'm doing my thing, but nothing's happening fast enough. And I remember my mother telling me that if I would just stay focused and be patient, she would book me some studio time and pay for it because I didn't have enough to pay for studio time.
Right.
She would book studio time with a guy named Felton Pilot
Really?
from Confunction. And I was like, really? You have access? How do you even know Felton Pilot? Well, she had a friend of a friend that knew him and had access. So,
your mom is a social animal.
I think so.
She really is. I mean, she's got the charisma that everybody's drawn to. And just as a sidebar, I'm fortunate enough to have been on. You pulled me into radio on your mom's show, Mama Knows.
That's right. Yeah.
And your mom is just so lovable and loving. Wow. She's so warm and that. Knowing you and your brother Jacques, the apples didn't fall very far from the tree. We know where you got it from. The encouragement that your mom gave you now is kind of a launching pad. So, meanwhile, all the rest of Vallejo knows James Earley is this bad bass player, and your mom's just saying, "Stay focused, James.
Yeah,
we'll get you some studio time." So then,
I think so. Yeah,
let's pick it up there.
So, okay, I'm away from my friends though. I'm by myself. I didn't really have any chums up here, and so I was eager. I'd been doing some home demos, but they sounded like home demos.
Right.
And she was like, well, I can get you into a real studio, at least to do a song there. And I think she was just trying to lift my spirits up, as I said. And so she got me in with Felton Pilot, and I was like blown away that she was even able to do that. And so she did. I met Felton. He was running the studio. It was no big deal there. I'm trying to be humbled, and I'd already met famous people. So even though I was a huge fan of Felton, I tried not to overwhelm him with my awe of him. And when I saw him, but
that's how I behave around James all the time.
Oh, come on!
So, and for our listeners who are outside of Vallejo, Felton Pilot was one of the founders of Confunction, which at the time was the biggest thing that had come out of Vallejo.
Second to Sly Stone.
Well, at that particular time,
yes,
they were the biggest thing.
They were
in
the
Vallejo.
big deal in Vallejo.
So
yes.
Really, the big deal in Vallejo prior to them, of course, was the great Sly Stone.
Yes,
and prior to him, Raymond Burr of all people.
Burr. Well, and Johnny Otis.
And Johnny Otis. Yeah. Okay, so but around the late 70s to the mid 80s. Mm-hmm. Vallejo's legendary band Confunction was really the biggest thing. So to be in the studio with Felton Pilot and be around here, that was a big deal.
It was huge. Yes.
That's the deal.
That's the deal.
Yeah.
Right.
It was. And I was really blown away, but I'm trying to be humbled and I didn't want to scare him off. So I'm like, hey, how you doing? And I need to record a song or whatever. So he let me do that. And I think he was impressed because I played everything on it and sang all of the harmonies and background vocals and lead. And I think he was impressed because I was so young and I really knew my way around music.
Now, were you producing this song yourself, or were you allowing him to guide the process?
No, that's just it. I think, Felton knew to let me do it, and he did.
Uh-huh.
But he's a producer. And he was then. I wasn't yet a producer. But he allowed me to do it, and I think he was impressed by how much I knew. And I wasn't trying to show off.
For a kid,
I was just in there.
You came into the studio, and you knew your way around it.
Doing my thing, and I came in as a client, and that was it. And I did the song, and then I remember I needed to come back and do some overdubs.
What was the name of the song?
Oh, man. What was the name of the song?
I hope it's something sexy.
It's not something that stuck, I guess.
I couldn't believe that she could do that to me was the name of the song.
That was something sexy.
But, it was a great song. It was fun. But anyway, Felton, I think because of money or whatever, I how you do a couple of days and then you come back and do a little bit more. I think I had just about everything done, but I needed to do a couple of overdubs. So I wound up coming back to do that after about 3 or 4 weeks. And Felton had told me then that he was going to be opening up, because at the time the studio was in his home, though.
Oh, okay.
I must tell you that.
Right.
The studio was in his home.
What year was this, James?
1987. 86, 87,
okay.
Right in that window.
We're talking about the house in Somerset, right? It was like up off of Georgia Street.
No. This one was off of kind of on the American Canyon side,
okay.
Mini Drive over there on that side. He lived over there at the time, and so anyway, I worked with him there first, and then I wound up going over to Somerset.
Okay,
but that was later, and so anyway, I did what I did, and he had said to me the second time that he saw me that he was going to be moving his studio into a building, and he needed someone to run the studio with him. And already I thought he was just having small talk with me or what, but he's telling me he needs an engineer in his studio. Well,
right.
And then eventually, when I didn't say anything, because I didn't even know if I should, he said, well, so you're interested in working in the studio, running it at night, because I want to have it around the clock. I was like, and again, I'm working at Orchard.
He met you.
I'm working at Orchard and Marine World. I was like, heck yeah, man, I'm going to do this, right?
Sure.
And he was like,
were you an engineer? Did you know you were an engineer at the time?
I was not an engineer at the time. Okay. And so that was the other part of it. The part two is I told him yes and was happy and ecstatic, but then I had to humble myself real fast and be like, I'm not an engineer.
I have to learn this.
And
I'm not craft.
And he's probably assuming that I'm an engineer, so I better tell him now before I leave. Don't let it drag out. Don't let it, mushroom. And so I just told him, I said, hey, man, I really would love to do it, but I don't know how to operate any of this stuff. And I knew that the next thing out of his mouth was going to be like, oh, I'm sorry, I need somebody that knows so we can get on with it.
Yeah. Right.
But he actually said, when I said, I'm sorry, I don't know how to operate any of this stuff, and I was really sad and felt dejected already, he said, you know what? I'll show you how to run all this. And I swear that I heard the angels sing at that moment. I know I did.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like I'm imagining. I heard angels, like Star Trek theme, And so I was like, whoa. And so he just said he'll show me.
That's like admitting to Mickey Mantle, like, yeah, you know what? I know we had a good time yesterday, but I don't really know how to play baseball. And Mickey Mantle says, you know what? Don't worry.
Yeah.
Don't worry. We got it covered.
Yeah. I mean, but
just come back tomorrow.
Yeah, it was great, man. He said, he basically said, come back tomorrow and I'll show you how to do it. And he did. And so, long story short, he taught me really fast because Felton, a lot of people aren't aware of the fact that Felton is some kind of technical genius.
He's a technical savant.
He is. He absolutely is. It's kind of freaky how intelligent this man and how smart he is about electronics and how, he's a fabulous musician. He's a multi-instrumentalist himself. Mm-hmm. He can play 20 instruments phenomenally.
Right.
And he's
the trombone.
Great singer. He plays the trombone. He plays the trumpet.
I mean, he plays all of the mainstream instruments.
Yeah.
But the first time I ever went to a function show and saw him burn on the trombone, on the trombone, I thought, well, now it's serious.
Yeah.
I mean, because the trombone is not something you pick up casually.
No.
And so for that to be instrument number like 6 or 7 or 8 for him,
right,
and for him to be able to burn on a trombone, if you meet somebody who can burn on the trombone but plays a bunch of other things first, you got to go, wait a minute.
Especially the other exotic versions of brass, like bass trumpet,
right?
And he plays trumpet as well. He plays valve trombone. He plays, which is just like a trumpet,
sure,
but it's a trombone that you play with valves.
Right,
but he can also do the slide. His nickname is Slide Clyde. But anyway, the bar was high. So believe me, I was nervous. But this guy also is a computer genius and a technical genius. And at the time, MIDI was the big thing about sequencing and all this stuff. And he knew all that stuff already, way better than anyone I'd ever seen or known. And so he takes me in, he shows me all that, and gives me a crash course in it. And I think he saw something in me that I didn't even really see in myself because he knew that I knew some things about technical, and I think that was the other attraction musically that he had for me. But at the same time, he had to teach me a bunch of stuff so that I understood it. And, but I guess he knew that I would be a good student, and that's why I think he took me on. And so he did. It was a crash course, and he didn't let up. He was like, you have to know this. And let me just go ahead and tell you this. He when it came time to do what I needed to do, he put me in his studio, right? And we moved into the new unit. We're there. All the equipment is now basically in boxes in the corner. And he said, okay, I want you to unpack all of the studio equipment.
He made you build the studio.
The mixer. It was a huge mixer, 32 channel mixer or whatever, but it had all, how it is, the spaghetti, we call it, all those cables. It looked like a telephone operator in the days of old, all the connection board. And he said, unpack that stuff, put it together. And by the way, I'm leaving. I have a meeting. I'll be back in 3 hours.
Your lesson in signal path.
Yeah.
was to build a recording studio.
It was absolutely.
Here's all the stuff.
Yeah.
Build the studio.
And good luck, and I'm leaving.
I'll be back
Yeah.
in 3 hours.
I was hoping just he'd be on the phone or something, but now he's leaving. I got a meeting to go to. It's very important. So anyway, he wanted it done, man. The sweat started flowing. I'm like, oh, God, this guy's going to come back, and none of it is the boxes are still going to be, And so I just didn't know what to do. But I remember what he said. I took the instruction, I put it together, and when he came back, the studio was up and running, and I was terrified. I really was. I just knew I'm going to be fired when this guy comes back. He'll probably be sweet about it, but he'll say, I can't use you here because you didn't
pass the test.
You didn't pass the test.
Yeah.
But I did, man. And I felt like I didn't, but I did.
Now, knowing what you know now, how built was the studio?
It was done. I got it together.
Okay.
Yeah. I hooked it up right. Like you said, Signal Path, I got it worked out.
Yeah.
I listened. I'm a good listener.
Yeah.
And I listened to what he said, and I followed the instruction. I think it was that and just desperation that got me through it.
You didn't want to go back to Orchard Supply.
I didn't want to go back. I don't think I could. I probably at that point had already quit. So anyway, I got it done, and very rapidly I went from being just his apprentice to a full-time engineer producer. I mean, because of his fame, the door kept not. There was knocks at the door.
It was
constantly.
too much work for him to just do it.
It was way too much work, and people were constantly coming through. And hip hop actually was new, and there wasn't any home studios, so people needed music. And all of these rappers that wanted to be rappers.
In Northern California, hip hop was born in that building.
It was.
Really, if you think about it, I mean, there was so much now that everybody sees that came out of Vallejo, but everybody in our generation looked up to Confunction.
Yeah. So people were coming through like crazy. So it was a crash course. And within 1 year, I mean, I can't even count how many projects we did. But, they were all local stuff. Nothing really took off. But we were doing some commercials, local commercials, and scoring and jingles and stuff like that. So we were having good fun.
So you cut your teeth in pretty much all manner of, of recording for every format.
Yeah, and I was making a lot more money than I could have possibly made at Orchard. So I was really happy about that. But, constantly working with people. And found out really fast that I was becoming a producer just from that. Had a good time. And as I said, one of the clients that came and knocked on our door was Stanley Burrell, who later became MC Hammer. And once we recorded his stuff, his first CD, he finished it up and he took it down to Los Angeles and wound up shopping a deal. And all the labels actually started a bidding war for him. And when that happened, Capitol, I guess, won the bid, and he signed with Capitol. I was in the studio with him when he got the phone call from his manager / brother, who called and said that he got the deal. And I think the first check was like $1.5 million or something.
Wow.
Which blew all of us away because, again, we're all, including Hammer, we're poor kids from the ghetto.
You're suddenly in the room with a millionaire.
Yeah.
Suddenly, yeah.
I mean, how many months removed are you from working at Marine World?
Only a few.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I'm just like, this has got to end really soon. And this is probably a joke or something's going to happen where somebody's going to be saying, just kidding to us or whatever. But that never happened. I mean, it just kept growing and growing. And so we had this phenomenal success. And that was really the beginning of the roller coaster ride. And it was definitely that.
So let's talk about that roller coaster ride. From that beginning, you had suddenly a hit artist on your hands. Now, you didn't yet have the hit record. You had the record, which everybody knew was good. And armed with that record that was good, he went down, shopped the deal, started the bidding war. And then now, all of a sudden, it's big time. You know that with a $1.5 million check, there's going to be a tour. There's going to be more recording. You're going to want more out of him, and this is just the beginning. What's next?
Well, let me just back up a little bit and say that Hammer was very different from all the other rappers that were coming to us. Every other rapper was only that. Not to take anything away from them, but they were just MCs, if you will. They would get on the microphone and they would basically rap over the music. and that was it. And they would go do a show, and they would walk back and forth with the microphone, and that was the show. They had a DJ scratching. They might have had a couple of, just maybe 2 dancers on the edge of the stage, but the rapper himself was just rapping, 1 2 1 2, yeah, come on, and that was pretty much the show that you saw. A lot of people left disappointed or just like, it was okay. It was nice to see whoever that was. But Hammer came a little bit different because he was really a dancer that became a rapper. He was a dancer that became a rapper. And also he was a preacher. And a lot of people know that he become a preacher later, but he didn't become a preacher later. He was always a preacher when he was MC Hammer. He was one of those young preachers that you hear about, but maybe not everybody sees. But he was an ordained minister when he was like 18 or 19. So
okay, well, for our listeners who are not familiar with that community, when you're a young preacher like that, there's a certain amount of charisma that's necessary to take that mantle. Mm-hmm. And that's really what you're talking about in the difference with him.
Right.
Is that he had that charisma where he knew that you have to take a room and you have to inspire a room. And you have to move the room emotionally.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So with that, okay, so he can rap. But that's only a part of the package.
Well, as I said, he was also a dancer. He was a street dancer from Oakland who, from his, when he was a child, that's what he did. So later when he became a preacher, he got serious about himself. He was already out of the Navy by his early 20s. He'd spent 3 years in the Navy or something. So by the time he was 21, I think he got his discharge, honorable, and he was out. And he decided to be what was called the Holy Ghost boy. He was just going to do gospel rapping. But what happened is he had success, such fast success, I guess, man, because he was a dancer, he wanted to see if he could actually merge the two. But he knew he probably couldn't be a dancer doing the gospel thing.
Right.
So he just said, I'm just going to do secular. I'm going to have fun. I will still do a song for God on each album, which he did. He still does to this day. He does one song for the Lord on every album. But then everything else might be about dance and just having fun and partying or whatever. And so he would do these songs, and it was great what we did in the studio. They were really high energy songs, but it was phenomenal because he had a different process too. He would come to the studio, and me and Felton would make the music, but this guy would actually dance in the studio to the songs.
Right.
Him and his dancers
would
have us turn the music up loud, and if the tempo was too slow, if there was something in the rhythm that wasn't right, you got to put a cowbell in there because I got to dance a little bit more.
He needed the room to move.
He needed the room to move in the studio even.
Right.
And so it was a very different process working with him, but we really enjoyed that. And I think that's what gave him that edge.
The initial concept of that record, you guys were in there, and it had to move people.
Yes.
Booties had to move.
We had to make dance records right from the gate.
Right.
And we did. And so when he would go do the shows, people would go nuts. I'll never forget that. I would come to him. We would record the song in the studio and then take it right to a club. He had connections already.
Right.
We would take it right from the studio to the nightclub, and he would perform at some of these clubs. They would already be expecting him as a guest, and we might even do the new song that we just recorded just to test it out. And I just remember how people would go crazy for this guy at a club, and he's unknown at the time. But at the same time, he's shopping his deal at Capitol, so I guess they caught wind of it, and the word got around, and he made a music video, and then that's what incited the bidding war in Los Angeles.
He had the foresight to make a video.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Beta. It was shot on Beta, by the way.
Shot on Beta. I had at the time a friend who was training with a martial artist in Oakland named Dathan Taylor. Mm-hmm. And Dathan Taylor was friends with Hammer. Mm-hmm. And so as you described this, I remember my friend had a cassette that he let me listen to in his car of those early recordings before they'd hit the airwaves. And he said, man, you got to hear this dude from Oakland. His name is Hammer. He's a friend of Dathan Taylor. And he put it on, and there was so much percussion.
Yeah.
And there was so much going on. It was so busy.
Yeah.
And I was just going, what is this? And then at the time you could say, man, this dude is really different. There's really a lot more going. You can't help but get charged from it. Mm-hmm. So the only other thing going on, in Oakland rap at the time was Too Short that we knew of, and it was so different.
So different. Yeah.
So yeah, we hear you, and now hearing that his process was different. Really, not that much of a surprise, but it
makes sense.
Yeah, it makes all kinds of sense.
And so from there, what happened for us is he shopped the deal. He got the deal with Capitol. They put out the record. It did phenomenal almost right away.
Yep.
For a brand new artist to go triple platinum was pretty crazy.
And that first triple platinum album was produced by you and Felton.
Yes. Let's get it started.
Let's get it started.
And so while the record was doing this thing, Hammer was out supporting it, doing shows. And so me and Felton were just back in the studio working with other people like E40 and whoever else in Vallejo.
Was coming in.
And we were happy to be doing it because we really started to get a lot of work from that. And it was great. But what happened is Hammer showed back up to the studio. It was kind of soon, too, because his record had just been released only for a few months, and he was already enjoying this success, but he comes back to the studio, and we're like, hey, man, what's up? Well, you just came by to hang out, or hey, it's good to see you. And he's like, well, no, I didn't just come back to hang out. I need you guys to shut down the studio and come out on the road with me.
Oh, what?
To come out on the road. And I'm like, well, I'd never been on the road before, so I'm like already excited about this. Felton had been on the road before,
you had
but
never been on the road.
No, I had never toured at that point. No, I'd done local stuff in
I
LA.
cannot tell you what your reputation was like back then.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about right around 1988, probably, right? 88, 89 maybe?
Yeah.
88.
No, not yet 89, because 89 was Please Hammer, Don't Hurt.
That's right.
So you're talking about 87, 88. And already, just as a musician in Vallejo, everybody knew you.
A lot of people did,
So
because
to
of the
hear,
success.
well, and to hear at this point that you hadn't been on the road yet.
I hadn't been on the road
yet.
yet.
Man, that's James Earley.
Yeah. But he invited us out on the road, and it wasn't to play, though.
Okay.
He invited us out on the road because he told us, because we wanted to know the reason we'd be out on the road.
Yeah.
Right. It kind of dictates
I'm dying to know, too.
Yeah.
how long we'd be out there. But right away he said, what's happened is I'm doing these shows. This is Hammer talking to me and Felton. I'm doing these shows, and what's happening is the engineers at the concert aren't giving me the sound that you give me in the studio. He was like, it sounds real big, and I love that. I need that same big sound out on the road. I can't articulate to them or whatever. They don't understand me. And maybe I don't know how to articulate it to them, but I need someone that does, or I need you guys to come in.
That's neither here nor there. He needs the sound.
He needs
However
the sound.
you arrive at it.
Yeah, make it happen.
Okay.
And so, he told us that, we were going to be salaried employees and we were going to live on a tour bus and hotels and all. I'm like, I'm there.
Sounds pretty good.
I'm loving it.
There. Yeah.
He gave us enough so that our bills were paid, and it was great, man. And so we're out on the road
I need you
now.
to close the studio and come out on the road with me.
And of course, like you mentioned, I'm thinking, well, pretty soon we are going to need to record the second album.
Okay.
But we'll just book time at studios around the country, which was what we did for a time, just to record stuff. There was remixes being done and different things had come up. We wound up being invited to a lot of soundtracks that were movies that were being done at the time. And I'll never forget Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie came out, and they wanted us on that soundtrack. So we went to the studio and made a song for that. So we're booking studio time at different studios around the country.
Where'd you go to do that?
Florida. I think we recorded part of it in Florida, part of it in Los Angeles, and maybe in Memphis.
So you're bouncing around all over the place, getting to know all these other rooms across the country.
Loving it, because I'm going to school. For
Soaking
me,
it up.
This is a university of music, and I'm learning.
And there isn't a better one.
Yeah, I'm
you're
learning.
going to all the top-notch joints.
Yeah, and meeting all the great engineers and all the techniques and being able to utilize some of my own now that I knew. And so doing this, but at the same time from that process, I was like, wow, this is cool. But as soon as we're done, I'm back on a tour bus. I'm back in the hotel, and I'm just twiddling my thumbs, waiting until I can book time at the next city. I don't even know what city we're going to be at, where we're going to have enough time to do it. It got really weird really fast. So I suggested to Hammer for this next album, and I don't know, man. At that time, I'd never even heard of this, but I decided, this was before Pro Tools, before digital audio equipment, portable equipment. I told Hammer, I said, we need to have a studio on the road with us that we can have. And he was kind of like, well,
portable.
How we going to do that? He didn't know. And I told him real fast. I said, well, wait a minute. The equipment that we had in the studio, I can actually have brought to a tour bus, but I need you to rent us or lease us or whatever, provide us with a tour bus. And it'll save us money anyway. It'll be cheaper than the studios that we have to rent time at. But let's gut out the back of a studio bus, a tour bus, and turn it into a studio.
Build the studio in it.
Yeah, which meant we used a 16-track reel-to-reel machine.
It's that Fostex B16 that's at Daryl's house, isn't it?
No, it was actually I bought a Tascam for that.
Okay.
The other one is one we did Let's Get It Started on, was the Fostex.
Okay.
But the next album, Please Hammer Don't Hurt 'Em, we actually purchased a Tascam, 16-track half-inch machine, and then we got, I think, a Panasonic mixer.
For recording studio nerds out there, the enormity of the sound of Please Hammer Don't Hurt 'Em was recorded on a half-inch 16-track.
16-track analog, yeah. And so we did that, and we fitted this bus. And fortunately for us, our bus drivers were carpenters and were open to it. But there was a lounge in the back of the tour bus, and they took out the TV, well, actually they left the TV back there, but they took out the cushions and all that stuff, and basically created space so that we could put the reel-to-reel in there. Electronically, they fitted it properly, and so it was great. I was able to be on the road so we could do the shows, but after the show, we would come right back to the bus and work. And so a lot of times we would
get in the bus in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
And then hit the road.
Yeah.
And you could work.
While the bus is moving, when we pulled into the next city, before we do the sound check, but then we had hours before the show, I'd come back to the hotel and work even more on the bus, or we'd park it backstage at the venue.
This is an amazing story.
I was really it was my world, and I'm so glad, I won't bore you with it on this conversation, but it was just, to cap it off, I think it was great because it kept me out of a lot of trouble. There was a lot of pretty girls out there, and thankfully I don't have children littered across the country. It could have happened because there was some pretty girls out there, but for me it was about getting at the music, and I was married at the time anyway, so
how you remained undistracted is a mystery to all.
I stayed out of trouble, man, but I certainly stayed focused on the music, and I wanted to do a better album than the first one, which was great. But I wanted to do something that was really going to explode Hammer's career, which he wasn't yet a superstar.
Did you just say explode his career?
You wanted to explode Hammer's career.
A guy who had a bidding war,
No, he had a great deal, and the first album was okay, but he was still a mid-level success at that point. He hadn't yet had the mega fame until the second album.
I gotcha.
So we recorded what we thought were 10 great songs, and one of them being You Can't Touch This, and that absolutely changed our lives.
Yeah.
You Can't Touch This.
Wow.
That was our first #1 hit, actually. And, Felton had hits before, but I don't even think he had a #1 pop hit before.
Yeah.
So You Can't Touch This was something we all shared in. And that album, the album was #1 for like 20 weeks or more.
The single sold 13 million copies or some crazy number, right?
Yeah, huge numbers.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. And so, being out there doing that, seeing it for me was like we said, it was like going to the School of Hard Knocks, because I learned so much. I got to meet all of the top executives. They wanted to meet me. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I was knocking on their office door. They were calling my phone. I don't even know how they got my number.
Who is the creator of this work that is suddenly a faucet of money?
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, fly him here now. That sort of thing. They would get my phone number. I don't even know how they got it. Even new numbers that I would get, they would just find them. These people are powerful, and they would find me and summon me at times, and it was great because they would treat me, fantastically, and so from there,
that was such a big deal back then, and our younger listeners didn't go through and experience what a big deal that record was, but it was huge. I mean, up until then, Capitol Records, their who else did Capitol have? They had the Beastie Boys,
right?
And the Beastie Boys' License to Ill album was huge. It was enormous.
It was, yeah.
But when the Please Hammer Don't Hurt 'Em record was at its peak, Capitol Records and the iconic Capitol Records building, they took down their flag and they hoisted Hammer's flag.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That was huge. Even the Beastie Boys didn't get that.
I didn't even know that. Wow.
Yeah.
But what a great, you're right, that's an historic building. It was great to be there and be around all the executives, and it was just a great ride. And this music industry has so many secrets about it and so many facets to it, but to be actually in the storm and not just hear about it, but actually be in the eye of the storm is phenomenal. Most people, even in their greatest escapade, might not ever see that sort of
not
fame.
experience that sort of thing.
And it was just great to witness, and I'm again humbled by that. And I really enjoyed the ride and getting to know things, and it helps even today what I do. It helps me to know, and I'm able to teach others about the business and stuff like that, you know. And it's not really a theory or an idea about what it might be like. I actually got to see.
At this time, you're like 24 years old.
Yeah.
And
how are you not ruined?
Yes,
That's the next thing I want to know.
I would have every time gone.
Yeah,
twice.
Just right, and yeah, I just can't imagine that I would have survived.
Self-control and being and you keep saying, and you are clearly a humble dude.
Well, you know.
But I mean, man,
yeah. How do you go on that ride and not come back?
Well, you know, I think that's the reason why I shared my story about being in the entertainment industry since I was like 5 or 6 years old.
Right.
So that when the Hammer thing happened, I wasn't like awestruck by it really.
It wasn't a completely new concept to you.
Yeah.
You had seen it.
I'd seen it. I had a taste. I'd been around fame and famous people and great deals of money, or people that had great deals of money. I've been around it. I've been to mansions and parties in Hollywood and all that stuff. So by the time the Hammer thing happened, I was probably the only one in the whole posse that was just kind of like, it's great.
This is fleeting.
Yeah, it's great. But yes, let's stay humble. Steady as she goes. Let's stay the course. Let's make sure that we stay focused and get back in the studio and work on another album. Let's think about the future. I mean, that was my whole thing, always. And whereas other people, were freaked out and they were like, "Oh my God, I can't." I was just like, we don't really have time to trip off of that. We have to focus. So we're meeting famous people all the time. We're going to the Grammys now,
right?
The American Music Awards.
This is one of those experiences where you're just going through the country, really just making your way, cutting a swath through the middle of the country, and if you're Hammer, you can wake up and decide who it is you want to meet that day. You know, where are you? Well, I'm in Memphis. Well, who do you want to meet? Well, who's here?
Yeah.
And you really on that tour are in a place that many people don't get to experience, which is you wake up in a city and that city belongs to you for that day. And if there's somebody in that city that's worth meeting, you can meet them.
That's right.
What an amazing experience.
It was great, man. And it's been great, and it continues to be. And as I said, being invited to Jimmy Iovine's mansion and having him hire me into the studio to work on projects. And
say what?
I know, right?
Hang out with this guy.
Get my jaw off the floor here.
Mine too, though. I mean, but he's a great, phenomenal guy and just really cool people. He's really humbled and down to earth. But
well, Jimmy Iovine has right now is made out of money, and he's known at this very moment by a whole generation of kids as the guy who was the half partner in Beats, and so they made all that money. But if you rewind his career to a lot of the places that people don't know about, even at the time that you're talking about in the late 80s, he had already done things like record Tom Petty.
Yeah. And
he was already a force that was firmly cemented. And so this is the kind of company you're keeping on this tour.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Not even just the tour, but in general. Like I said, industry functions and Grammys and all the award shows and Oprah and Arsenio, just everything that was the hot show.
Oh, Arsenio, man.
Yeah. It was great to just be there, on the set. You see it on TV, but then to be there on the set, backstage, hanging out with him and all that is just like that. Right. That is surreal when it happons. And it's like, wow.
I remember a few things about the Arsenio Hall show. And one of the things I remember clearly, and not just snapshot time, but just like video, is Hammer going lunatic crazy all over that stage.
And lighting the place on fire.
Right.
Yeah.
And thinking, I've never seen someone who's so fit.
Yeah.
Because he's clearly singing this song, at least from what I could see. And he's dancing 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Oh, yeah. He wasn't lip syncing. He was doing his thing.
And those pants are going 1,000,000 miles an hour faster because you're like, what? It's hard to even process. And it was so incredible, so impactful.
It was, man. And I appreciate that. But it was just like crazy. Watching him every night, he was that way on any stage. So by the time we got to the TV shows.
Night after night.
Yeah, it was just kind of like, well, there he goes again, But it's just great to see. And so from there, I'm getting invited to work with other people, but not yet. Had I left Hammer, I continued to work with him throughout the success of the release of Please Hammer Don't Hurt Him, and then we did Let's Get It Started. Not Let's Get It Started. We did Too Legit to Quit. was the next album. And simultaneously, I was working with Oaktown's 357 on their second solo record. And just a ton of other stuff. Like I said, soundtracks. I got to work with Sly Stallone. He was aware of Hammer's success, and he hired us to oversee the soundtrack for the Rocky V film. And then from that, we were invited to score part of it, which was great because we started, he gave us what he wanted. First, he sent a note, a letter, it might have been a phone call as well, saying what he wanted and what kind of music he wanted. And I just, based on what he asked for, and he also sent some clips from the movie, which hadn't yet been released, of course. He was still filming it and editing. And so when I saw the dailies, I was like, whoa, that's kind of cool, high energy. So I did basically a song for the film. And when he heard it, he was just like, wow, this is great. I want to meet these guys.
This is it. This is what I wanted.
This is what I wanted. There's just one thing I want you to do, whatever it was. I don't even remember now. But he said there was one thing he wanted us to do, and that he would want to meet with us and tell us. I was really, really happy that I left this thing out.
So here we go. There's all this opportunity to meet all these people, and you get a call from Sly Stallone.
Yeah.
He wants to meet you and tell you this piece of
I'm so glad that I didn't get it quite right because I was in a studio in New York producing it at the time because we were on the road, and I would, like I said, sometimes I would go to other studios if I needed to. If I didn't have the bus still, even though we had the bus, if it wasn't with me, I would record in whatever studio, and we were in Manhattan. And I remember booking studio time there, and I did what I did.
Where? Do you remember the studio?
No, I don't.
Okay, please continue.
I have to ask two questions before we get too far past Sly. One is one of the things, did he ask you, you have to give Frank a job?
You have to give Frank a job over here.
Yeah, over here.
No, he didn't do that. He didn't do that. But I hadn't yet met him in person. So I'm in Manhattan right now. We saw the dailies, and we actually scored to what we saw. We sent it to him. At that time, the internet was new, but I think we sent it over the internet. It was brand new at the time. And he got it right away. He listened to it. He said he liked it, but there was one thing he wanted us to add, and that he would like to meet with us in Los Angeles. So I had my first Learjet plane ride.
He summoned you.
He summoned us.
And sent a plane.
Learjet. And I'm like, whoa. And honestly,
getting on a plane so Sly can meet us in Los Angeles.
The plane was so small that I was afraid to get on it. I ain't gonna lie, man.
Yeah.
It really isn't much bigger than this table that we're sitting in front of.
Yeah.
And for our listeners,
beautiful Learjet.
James Earley is not a small person.
No, he's a full-size dude.
Yeah, he's
I'm a big guy.
Yeah.
But yes, me and about 7 or 8 other people got onto this little tiny plane.
Yep.
And
lean, great shape.
Yeah.
I feel like if you if you hadn't had that success in music early on, you probably could have been linebacker.
Yeah, I probably would have been, if I got invited to. But, I'm going to meet, speaking of great bodybuild guys, but I'm going to meet Sly Stallone. He's Rocky.
Who at the time was at the peak of his fitness, which was at the peak of fitness in general.
Yes.
He was at that time the fittest guy on the planet.
He was both Rocky and Rambo.
Right.
He was the guy you didn't want to mess with. And so we go to his office, and I'm expecting what you guys imagine. I knew when we did meet with him, when we got off the plane and went to his office in Hollywood, I just knew that he was going to open the door and be, hey, yo, how you doing over here? Sit down. What I want you to do is, I expected that because that's all I've seen.
Sure.
But he was this phenomenal, articulate, astute businessman, and so polite to us, man. It blew me away. I was absolutely floored. I did, in fact, judge a book by its cover. I had no idea. But he's, I've since studied up on him and everything. He actually wrote Rocky.
Yeah, that's his movie.
Well, you know what? And I don't want to derail from your story for very long, but he not only did he write Rocky, but he got a meeting with MGM, and MGM offered him $250,000 at the time. He was sleeping in a broken down Pinto.
He didn't have anything. Yeah.
He had nothing, and he had the wherewithal to say, "No, thank you. I don't want to sell you this. This is my vehicle."
Yeah.
It wasn't just that, though.
They wanted to buy it from him outright, leave him out of it, give him $250,000 to walk away, and then they were going to cast Ryan O'Neal.
That's right. But he insisted and said, no, I want to star in this film, and you can keep your money. Of course, they wound up signing
What a
him
bold
anyway.
move.
And then look what happened. I mean,
Yeah.
he basically created his own stardom.
So that plays right
Self-made.
into what you said. I mean, he's an astute businessman. He's articulate. He knows exactly what he's after.
Yes.
And now you walk into the room, and what he was after was James Earley, and there you are.
Phenomenal gentleman. One day I'll bore you with what his office was like. 'Cause
There's
that was
no,
crazy.
you don't tell boring stories at
I know.
all. I want every bit of it. I love
It
it.
was just crazy, man. His office, the short version of it is we come in and he has an office, or at least an area that you go into where the secretary is, that looks like every other office you've ever seen. Have a seat. Mr. Stallone will be with you. We waited the traditional 30 minutes that you might imagine, maybe even 45, but
Okay.
you're going to wait.
But you're about to meet Sly.
You're going to wait. If it's 3 hours,
Right.
you're going to not go anywhere.
I wait till
That's-
Thursday to
Yeah,
meet
you know
Sly.
what I mean? I might have to be kicked out of this building.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, I'm sitting there, and we get invited in to eventually after 30 minutes. And, the secretary says, follow me this way. So we go into the office. There's a door right there.
Uh-huh.
It's not like we had to walk down a hallway. We go right through the door. This dude's office is huge. It's not just your average size room. It's a giant room. Like, whoa. And inside of this giant room, there's just a bar and a giant bed. A giant bed, which I've never, ever, almost
doing
like
that.
some crazy fairy tale. The bed was bigger than anything I've ever seen before in my life. It wasn't a king. It was like,
This was a custom-made bed.
it was a custom made, like 17
And it was
kings.
enormous.
That was huge.
It's like Shaq's bed.
Right.
Yeah. No, but it was like 17 kings.
Jesus.
And it went out further than what a normal
Right.
bed stops. It was like twice the length of a bed. And so it was a big giant rectangle in this room that was beautiful. That you could only imagine what he's doing in that. And
Yeah.
he's got, he's in there, he's looking sharp. He had a nice shirt on, you know what I'm saying? He's looking cool. And he had 2 Playboy bunnies. They were twins. And
They were twins.
Oh,
and they were
Lord.
both gorgeous.
Oh,
and they were
Lord.
in lingerie. I know, it's crazy. They were
You were
wearing
going to skip
lingerie.
this story?
It blew me away, dude, even now that I'm
us
thinking
away.
about it. And we
Hey,
come in
this
there.
was a guy in the middle of the week. This is his work day. This is what
Wednesday.
his work
Yeah,
day
yeah,
was.
it's a Wednesday. It's not Saturday
I
or
gotta take a
Friday
meeting.
night. It was like Wednesday
Hold my calls.
It was like Wednesday at like 11, a.m.
Right.
So I'm like, whoa. And he was dressed nice, and he was very, hey, how you doing? You know what I mean? I'm Sylvester Stallone. Sit down, have a seat. And so we were happy to see him. Me and a couple other guys that were there representing Hammer or whatnot. We came in there, and we sat down, and I'll just never forget. He asked us, did we want something to drink? And we, of course, you're almost afraid to ask. And he's
Sure.
like, no, you want it? And I was like, yeah, just give me a soda. So he had the young ladies get up and go to the bar, make the sodas for us, whatever it was. I didn't want to drink
you
in front
something
of
nice.
Sly. Yeah.
Right.
They bring it back to us. They give us the drinks. They don't even speak, even though I'm sure they could. They didn't. And they came back after they were done with that and sat at his feet on the floor.
It's good to be the king.
Yes,
It
it was
is.
very kingly, I'll tell you that. And so that was it. They just sat there on the floor, and he spoke to us on the edge of the bed, by the way. He didn't have a chair.
Uh-huh.
He was on the edge
That
of the
was
bed.
his chair.
That
The
was
edge
his
of the
chair.
bed.
The edge was, yeah, exactly. And he's sitting there, he's doing his thing. He's talking to us and telling us what he wants. He was very articulate, very specific, because this is his baby,
Right.
about what he wanted. And at the same time, so we met with him for like 2, maybe 3 hours just talking. And it was like time stopped, you know what I mean? But he's a great guy. He's very funny when he wants to be, very jovial, but at the same time, very matter of fact and very business. And wow, I just really enjoyed that experience being there. But he was, once we got down to it, I knew exactly what he wanted. He told me, and he said he trusted us because he liked already what he heard, and we did it, submitted it to him later, and the film came out and did great. And I'll never forget, he invited us to the premiere in Hollywood. And
Did you go?
Oh, absolutely, because
Okay.
he invited us to sit
Right.
with him.
Oh, wow.
No kidding.
There was a ton of people there, and he was like, these guys are going to sit with me. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So we sat with him, and we watched it. And it
That's
was like,
incredible.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
Yeah, it was just crazy. It was
This
like a
is-
dream come true, man.
This was
for
the
sure.
boring. James was not going to bore us with this.
I don't want to bore you with the
Hey,
story.
man, it
That's
was-
a short story too.
it
Remember,
was
there's more
just-
detail.
Yeah.
Yes, there is, but I won't
Yeah.
bore you with that.
So I have to ask, all of this happened during the Hammer tour.
Yeah.
And When was the last time you talked to Hammer?
Like I said, what happened after the success that we had, it was so mega, everything kept growing and growing, including Hammer, you know, and I don't really fault him. I mean, you hear all these stories, but his fame grew so much, so fast. His finances grew so much, so fast, but attention and everything, he probably didn't sleep at night. And then what happened was he became never inaccessible to me. I could always, if I needed to talk to him, I could, but he had so many bodyguards after a while and handlers and just hangers on.
Yeah.
Many of them that I never met before in life. You know, I would go away, and then even doing the Sly thing that he assigned me to do, when I come back to try to share it with him, there's like 7 bodyguards that don't even know me that are trying to stop me.
It's new people.
You can't even go into his dressing room. I'm like, the hell I can't. You know, he wouldn't have one if it weren't for me, and he'll tell you that. You know what I mean? And then, of course, you know, he came out one time and heard me getting into it with the bodyguards. It was like, no. This guy always comes in here no matter what. But I could see that it was getting out of hand.
Right.
And I just said, I don't know. I'm getting offers to work with other people, and I got tired of being on the road.
So you got off the bus. You chose to get off the bus.
I chose to get off the road. Yeah, but at that point we weren't even on the buses anymore.
Yeah.
Eventually,
well, I was speaking figuratively, but literally, you weren't on the bus anymore.
Well, what happened is he eventually got so big, Capital bought him a 727 jet,
right? Yeah,
and painted Hammer Time on the side of it, and so we flew everywhere we wanted to go after that. You know, at that point, but it was
gone were the days.
Yeah. And so it just got, to me, a little out of hand, though, because of that. You know what I mean? Yeah. I liked how organic us traveling together and being in a smaller space and hanging out and being able to talk and hang out like
and it
like
forced
chums.
That intimacy that you could use to stimulate the creativity.
All of us, the entire crew, we were all really bonded.
Right.
There was a closeness. We were a family, and this family was being diluted, if you will, with other people and people that were glad-handing and people that weren't necessarily our friend, but were coming after the money, if you will. Sure. And so, and I don't know that Hammer had time to really deal with that properly. But instead of, grabbing him and shaking him. That's a big
challenge. And you're right. He was so busy that I could see that getting out of hand. Yeah. And he doesn't have time to deal with that.
Yeah, and as his friend, I mean, I considered him to be a dear friend. At the time, I couldn't grab him and shake him and say, hey, man, you need to stop this.
Snap out of it.
He wouldn't have snapped out of it, and I don't think most people would. And so I just chose to go my own way and work with other people because up to that point, I'd been an exclusive producer working with just Hammer artists and him and whatever he assigned me to.
Right.
But the phone was ringing. I was getting offers from L.A. Reid and a lot of other people to do other things that I had to turn down or were being turned down for me. I might not even get the message. I found out later that I was getting offers from different people. And so anyway, I just got out there. I wound up, doing my own thing. And I wound up working with Jimmy Iovine and spent a lot of time working at Interscope Records and pretty much doing production at all the major labels. That was pretty much
the beginning of Interscope, too.
It was the very beginning of Interscope, yes. Ted Field and Jimmy Iovine started a label called Interscope.
Right.
Actually, it was Interscope Film at first.
Huh.
And then it became Interscope Records.
And they merged with David Geffen and gigantic, huge.
Yeah. But even before that, when they were still like the small label, who was on the label at the time?
At the time,
Jimmy Iovine worked with everybody. I mean,
but to start his label, that was like his pushing off. He was going to become. Now he went from sort of producer to executive.
Tupac had been carrying bags for Digital Underground.
Yeah.
And he was a dancer for them. And so eventually he, had wound up rapping, I think, on one of their singles. Uh-huh. And from that, he started to get attention.
Right.
And he wound up getting signed to Interscope Records very early in his career.
Yep.
And even before Death Row came there, he was signed to Interscope Records. And as well, the actor Mark Wahlberg, he was Marky Mark before that.
Right.
Marky Mark of the Funky Bunch. And so he was signed there because I think Jimmy Iovine had taken a liking to Donnie Wahlberg as well as he had an interest in New Kids on the Block, even though they were signed to Columbia Records.
Right.
He befriended Donnie Wahlberg, and Donnie, he basically told him, I have a younger brother, Mark, who used to be in New Kids on the Block. A lot of people don't know that.
Right.
And now, he's more into the rap thing. So I'd like to do an album on him. And he was supported by Interscope, and it came out and did very well. And so I had the honor of working with him on some of his early stuff.
Didn't Interscope Film do Rattle and Hum as well?
I don't know.
I know he had a role in that. I just don't know exactly what.
Honestly, I don't know, but I know that Ted Field had a great string of hits.
Yeah.
He comes from money, Ted Field.
I know that Jimmy Iovine did stuff with everybody. John Lennon.
Yeah.
Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
Yeah, Stevie Nicks.
Yeah. Eminem.
Well. No,
Eminem all worked together.
And also, what's the band that did Don't Forget About Me?
Simple Minds.
Simple Minds. He produced that.
Yeah, there you go.
And that's, he's a phenomenal, Jimmy Iovine is a phenomenal engineer and producer himself. A lot of people don't know. And that was really the thing. Working for him was like going to school too, because he was great, but at the same time, first of all, he wouldn't work with you if you weren't able in the first place. But if you were, he knew that he
wasn't going to give you the kind of shot that Felton gave you.
Right.
He was beyond.
You better be good enough already, but he knew then that he could talk to you and tell you what he wanted as an engineer,
right?
As opposed to just even executive. Most executives are not musicians; they're not engineers, and so honestly, the communication can be kind of strange. But with Jimmy Iovine, it was great because he could tell you. Give me a little bit more highs in the vocals. As a matter of fact, the frequency, a little bit around 2000, I need a little bit more of that, that sort of thing. Or the mix isn't right. I need more compression in the mix. You know what I mean? He would tell you what it needs
He understood what was missing in the recipe.
Yes. And could tell you exactly what that ingredient was that needed to be replaced or enhanced.
Right.
And so it was great working with him. I really enjoyed that.
Tell us what you told us earlier about Luther Vandross.
Oh, I was telling you that, as I said, after I left Hammer and his crew to go work with other people, for a time, you don't know where the work's going to come from. And I do have to mention Denzel Foster and Thomas McElroy, the producers of En Vogue. Creators of En Vogue, who were before that
Bay Area legends.
Legends, right? Yeah. Before that, they were in a band. They were members of the band Club Nouveau, and also were mentored by Felton Pilot. I hadn't yet met them really at that time when they were being mentored by Felton, before and during Club Nouveau. But once that happened, they had success. They got out there and did their thing. And wound up producing Tony, and created this female group that was going to be the new Supremes, and they were going to call it En Vogue, Pretty Girls, and they were going to sing harmony and change the world. And it was kind of cool because what they did is they married R&B and hip hop. They took those two things and put vocals over the top of that, and kind of created a new sound by doing that. And so at that point, I did meet them.
They really were pioneers of that sound.
They were, truly, and I would run into these guys at industry functions. And at that time, they were young
go-getters.
They were young go-getters, and I was too. And so we really hadn't, like I said, knew each other, but we knew of each other, and we befriended each other that way because we knew all the same people. We all were from the Bay Area legends and young guys, young entrepreneurs. So for that reason, we had a like-mindedness, and we all hit it off. And so I just kept seeing them after a while, time and time again, at industry functions, Grammys, American Music Awards. I would run into them there. We'd hang out in the green room or whatever and just laugh about stuff, hang out, check out the chicks. And so we're just having fun doing all that. And then one day I remember telling them that I was planning on leaving Hammer. How do you guys feel about that? They were both quick to tell me, you know what, if it's time, it's time. It's time for you to do your own thing. And they'd been through something similar to that. So they
went through it with Club Nouveau.
They did. And they gave me good advice and told me to just believe in yourself and you'll be fine. And even went beyond that. They said that it might, because this industry can be strange for a person that leaves something huge and then goes to do something else. You might be left out in the cold. You don't know if you're going to be blackballed or whatever. You just don't know. And Tommy and Denny actually kind of just told me, man, don't worry about it. We'll make sure you have work. And they did. And I forever owe them for that because they did. They almost right away had me producing songs.
So you got started on En Vogue.
Yeah, I mean, well, I was doing that. I was working on other things, but they just made sure that I continued to work, is what I'm saying.
Sure.
I had other work as well, but it was fun because I really liked Tommy and Denny. We had, we came from the same place. They were Bay Area. I wasn't out in Florida or New York. I was here in the Bay,
right,
and able to work with these guys that were cool.
And they stayed in the Bay.
Yeah, they stayed in the Bay. Their studio was here, or we were working out of Fantasy and at Starlight Studios in Richmond. And then ultimately decided they were going to create their own place. And so anyway, we hit it off, and we were doing a lot of stuff. They're in the studio working with En Vogue. They brought me in to work with En Vogue. And so I'm hanging out with the girls, and, I'm playing on other projects for them as well. They would hire me to play bass and guitar and produce on different things. So it was great just being around these guys. And, just going back to mentoring, I have to give them credit. These guys are my age, but I have to call them my mentors as well. Maybe I mentored them a little bit as well, but, they were mentored by Felton Pilot, and so was I. But at the same time, they continued to give. So they schooled me a lot about the industry things, how to deal with industry executives or how to submit material. Just whatever advice I needed in production at that point in my career, they were there to tell me, and just had no problem. Basically gave me a home after Hammer. It was great.
When you decided to get off the bus, the Hammer bus, what was Felton doing?
Felton was, at that point, Felton had become Hammer's musical director.
Okay.
And then he went from using DJs on stage to actually a full band.
Having a band, right.
A full band.
Yeah.
It was huge. It was, like 7 keyboard players and,
Yep.
a drummer and a percussionist.
Melvin Carter was in that band.
Yeah.
Rich Aguan was in that band.
Yeah.
Juan Escovedo, Billy Shoes Johnson.
All the great guys.
Sandra Manning played keys in that band.
Right.
Dave Agent played bass in that band.
Paisley.
Yeah, Paisley was that's right.
Yes,
man.
Yes, and so many others, man. Some really great guys. George Williams and Michael Buchholz, and a lot of talented musicians. Ken Franklin. And just a lot of great guys. And also Tyrone Duncan was Hammer's drummer for many years. And we called him T Super, but phenomenal drummer. And, it was just a great bunch of guys. But Felton basically was overseeing that.
Right.
And having his own issues on a business level with Hammer's label and whatnot. And I think even he was kind of growing tired of certain things. So he continued to do that for a time, and then eventually he left as well. So that's pretty much what happened there. But Felton kind of just went another way. And then around that time, I think he was considering, or maybe the guys from Confunction were considering
a reunion,
getting back together, which they did.
Yeah. Boy, was Vallejo waiting for that.
Oh, I think the world was.
Yeah.
We all were, yeah, for sure.
And just to give a shout out in that direction, boy, Confunction is sounding great nowadays.
They always have, though. But you're right. I think they may sound better today than they ever did.
Well, I think that's true. I mean, they managed to inject youth into the old funky sounds. Because a lot of those bands that came from the 70s, they just maintained a specific sound. And that's great. Like the Gap Band. You go see the Gap Band. Yeah, they sound great. They sound like the Gap Band. But Confunction, they sound young and energized. And Michael Cooper is, he looks like he could bench press everything that's on the stage. And so they're sounding great still.
Yeah,
Michael Cooper, the trombone.
Michael Cooper is definitely not one to run up on if you think that you're going to try to have your way with him. He's a very strong gentleman and a sheriff. So he's not someone that you just want to
He's not a pushover.
No, not at all. He's currently, and always has been. He's not just new to law enforcement. He's been a police officer for probably 40 years. And so he's, they're great, talented guys. Cooper, in addition to those things, he's probably one of the best guitar players I've ever heard.
Man,
he really is. Just
terrific,
phenomenal musician. He too is a drummer, Michael Cooper. And
I wouldn't put it past anybody in that band to play anything.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just the level of talent you have to expect from everybody. And maybe everybody doesn't play everything, but you don't get caught unaware.
Yeah, but great guys, you're right. Their show is incredible.
Their show is incredible.
It's always worth it for you to spend your money at a Confunction show.
That's true.
That's all I can say.
That's true. Eric Young on the bass. A little shout out to Eric Young. Brian Collier on the drums. That's a bad drummer. Yeah. Man, he's bad.
Oh, yeah, he's ridiculous. EQ, I'm a bass player, and I look at that guy play, and I go, wow.
Yeah.
Listen to that,
He's something.
And plus, EQ's such a great guy.
What an entertainer, too.
Oh, yeah. That's his true axe, I believe. He's a phenomenal bassist. He really is a funky dude.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that really makes him stand out is he's an entertainer.
Yep.
In a way that we don't get anymore. This guy is constantly moving, and if he could do the splits on the stage, I'm sure he would.
He takes a bass solo. And this is for our listeners and somewhat for Pete. EQ takes a bass solo, and it might be a 5-minute bass solo.
Yeah.
And he might play bass for 2 minutes of it.
Yeah.
Because he'll start out and he'll do something ridiculous on the bass, and while your mouth is agape, he'll do something else to make you start laughing and really draw in the crowd. And he's such an entertainer that what an asset.
Yeah.
And that band's got assets in every direction.
Yes, they do.
Everybody's good.
Everybody's phenomenal. Yeah. What a great band. Yeah, so Felton, he's really, I'm happy for him. I'm loving to see him in his element again. He continues to make music and produce, though. He's doing things. He's scoring films and doing quite a few things. And actually, Confunction currently is releasing a reunion album. And I call it a reunion because they haven't done an album in 25 years or so.
Wow.
And so they're just now releasing that. And I was blessed enough. Felton called me in to work on a song with him, produce a song.
Wow.
And I'm playing bass on a song. And it's lovely because this particular song is a duet between Confunction and Tony.
No kidding.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm just like, oh man, I'm done. I'm cooked.
For a Bay Area music fan, you just described a marriage that's
Come on,
I love it, man.
Yeah.
And I'm playing bass on that song, so I'm like, yes, this is nice.
Wow.
That is nice.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what you're doing nowadays and who you're working with.
Well, I'm among others. Like I said, I'm in the studio working on this Confunction record, which we just finished. It's being mastered now and will be released soon. But I'm working on a few projects. Some of them I can't speak of because they're not yet released. But I'm doing some great things. I've been in the studio with E40's family working on some things. They have a film that they just finished up starring E40. So I'm currently scoring that film and helping.
That's a dude who's not afraid to get his hustle on, man.
Not at all.
Absolutely not.
Not at all.
He
and
works hard.
It's a great comedy film along the lines of like a Kevin Hart film or something that you might imagine. A lot of funny stuff going on. It's like I want to call it a hood comedy, but it's more comedy than it is hood. But it's got those elements, of course, because it has E40 and whatnot. But it's been great, and so helping to film that. I've been on the set a lot. They're just about finished with the filming, but from that, I'm inspired to score it, and so that's what I've been hired to do.
No kidding.
Of the scoring for the film, yeah.
Wow.
And just
Incredible.
Like I said, helping to supervise the soundtrack.
I'm just gonna throw it out there. Can you bring me with you on a field trip? When you're gonna score, I just want to watch you in that process.
Yeah, I'd love to have you there, man.
All
it's
right.
great. What we have to do is, they put the film up on a screen.
Yep.
And then you basically put music to that. It could be music that you've already recorded, but in many cases you actually have to create music to what you're seeing.
Sure.
So you got to look at the scene and watch it and then basically create a mood for it in whatever way. If it's a hip hop movie, you need to do some hip hop music underneath.
Right.
But if it's a love story, which this is not, you need to put violins and strings in and make it sound really sad or loving or whatever might be happening.
Right. But you create the oral mood. or enhance the visual with the oral mood.
Yeah, what guides you more? Is it like the dialogue, or is it the images that are on the film? Like, what do you feel more, or is it? It's obviously probably a mix.
It's all of the above. Yeah, you look at it and you go, well, you know what? If you don't have anything, and see, that's just it. There might be a scene that needs silence though too.
Sure,
because you can actually do music that gets in the way, but sometimes you don't know that until you try it first.
Yep.
You try some stuff, you look at what's going on, and as long as your edit is good, then you make the appropriate music for that scene.
Now, you said that it's the Stevens family that's making this movie. Mm-hmm. How much of Earl's involvement was in the creation of this film, the writing of the film, and the? It
was written by his younger brother, Donnell.
Okay, so Donnell wrote it.
D-Shot.
Yeah,
and D-Shot also directed it. And a lot of people, a lot of people don't know it, and I swear.
Well, here's why I asked the question, because I don't have any doubt in the capability of either one of them. But what I know about them is that they are musicians. I mean, they're rappers, and their persona is that they're rappers from the hood, and they are the genuine article. Mm-hmm. But I also know that they both read music. So when you have a film that was created, in this case by Donnell, a guy who thinks musically and understands that process intimately, how much space is there for the person scoring it? In other words, if you're watching or if you're scoring a film that was created by somebody who's a pure film director who didn't come from music, you know, maybe they don't leave you as much open space, or maybe they don't consider that, or maybe as they're shooting something, they don't say, well, okay, let's let that be for a while and give that a moment, because there's a musical moment in there. Mm-hmm. And maybe not everybody thinks that way. Did you find that because you've scored other things, that this film played more to your ability to score and create mood for it because of that?
I think, you know, I'm thankful that I've been experienced in it, because it helps. But when you look at a movie and you have to add the music that's appropriate for that film, and, you know, in this case, I mean, Rocky V, you know, is one thing, and I've done a few. But just to give you the extremes, Rocky V is still going to be more about athleticism and that whole thing.
Right.
You're going to hear this music that's very strong and energetic, but at the same time, it has military elements and different things that you might want in a movie like that, in a Sylvester Stallone film. Whereas E40 is like the other extreme. E40 is, you know, he's a rapper. He's probably one of the most famous rappers, and certainly he's got that street element. So you know, and it's a comedy.
But it's also a comedy.
It has to have music that's comical,
right?
Not silly, but maybe even silly at times, but it has to be kind of in a cool way, because E40 is a cool rapper. He's not just a rapper. He's like one of the coolest, you know what I mean? That sort of thing.
Well, but what I mean is, it's not, and I don't mean this as to detract from the film itself, but sometimes if you're a musician, you think of the film as, again, not to downplay it, but you almost think in terms of a long form music video, so that there is space for music. Is it different when somebody thinks that way than when you're doing a film? The military elements or the physical elements of a Rocky movie exist, and that's, you know, it's very masculine, and it's very you know, like there's fanfare,
gladiatorial elements.
But does it breathe differently because it was created from a musician sensibility?
Absolutely, it does. And I think so. I mean, you know, E40 you're right. He's a drummer. A lot of people don't know. He played drums in band when he was in school. Band, baby. And I think it influenced his rap style. And then his father is a phenomenal blues guitarist. A lot of people don't know that. Earl Stevens Sr.
Yep.
And then his baby sister, Sugar T, she is a rapper and very well known for that, but she's also a singer. And she has a great voice. And so, I mean, you know, you have to really kind of keep that in mind when you present them things anyway.
Yep.
So if I'm working on their movie, I got to make sure I'm dotting my I's and crossing my T's. They're going to be on that.
Yep.
And, you know, but let me just talk about this for a second. You know, D-Shot is very well known for being a rapper himself.
Yep.
And he's part of the crew, the Click family and all of that. But a lot of people don't know that he's a fantastic writer, and he is. But also he's a great filmmaker and self-taught. And, you know, I've known D-Shot since he was a kid, and he was like, he was rough when he was a young guy.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of rough guys, but he was certainly one of the rougher. Never with me. He always enjoyed me. We were great. We got along great. But other people that he didn't know,
you didn't want to
step
on his toe.
You didn't want to step on his toe and not say, excuse me, it would be bad, you know. But he actually matured in a way that I'm really proud of him. He went on to really self-educate himself. He actually went to film school, and he learned how to.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he put himself into a film school in I think UCLA or something.
Wow.
Or USC.
Yeah,
he went to USC.
There's not a problem with that film school at all.
He put himself into a class.
They've done well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he put himself in there, man, and then came out and actually started to apply that to his filmmaking, and he knows a lot more than most people think. He did a phenomenal job directing
If
this
he went
film.
to either USC or UCLA's film school, that's good enough.
Yeah.
Do you know that just as a sidebar, the USC Film School has had a participant in the category of Best Picture for the last something like 82 years.
Mm-hmm.
There's been at least one USC graduate whose film was nominated for Best Picture every single year.
And if he went to UCLA, guest lecturer Brad Pitt.
Right.
It's Professor James Franco.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, wow.
Just they don't mess around, man. Either school, top notch.
Yeah.
But it's great, man. Some of these guys, man, you never know. But
I was unaware that he had done that for himself, but it's
bar
not
is high.
surprising. It's
well,
really
I think what he knows, what Donnell knows, and what E40 knows, and many, many others, even Hammer and so many others, the bar is high in the industry. And if you're smart, you will continue to self-educate and make yourself better so that you can reinvent. Madonna has been phenomenal at that reinvention so that she could just carry on a career that long. I mean, she's fantastic. And speaking of musicians, she's a musician.
Sure.
I don't know if a lot of people don't know she played drums as well back in the day. She was a drummer in a band before she went solo and came out. So, the bar is high. We have to continue to innovate and reinvent, and that's the best thing. I do want to talk about that. I think my best advice to people that are up and coming is to self-educate and also try to come up with a new way to do things. Think about how the industry is going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now. You know what I mean? Don't just be in the moment of today. Okay, let me do what everybody else is doing right now. You have to think about what people are going to do later, because 5 years is going to happen and 10 years is going to happen. And when it does, are you going to be behind or are you going to be ahead of everyone else?
Sure.
So I think it's important to do. So again, benefiting from mentoring and learning to listen and all of these things has certainly helped me. And I just hope that everybody else will take heed and pay attention to that. Just know that you have to be a leader and not just take a back seat in what you're doing.
That's a great segue into the question I've been trying to ask all night because I love this. So, okay, U2 just came out. Put their album out. $100 million guaranteed from Apple to distribute.
The band U2.
Yeah, the band U2. Put this new album out. And that to me is an innovative way to get their music back out to people. They haven't put an album out in 5 years. Mm-hmm. And all these younger kids, 5 years, shoot, if you were 7 years old, you're 12 now. Maybe you're buying your first album and you've never heard of U2. So I think it's a genius way to get your album in front of, 500 million people, potentially.
Every iTunes user,
right? And then they're still going to release the album next month, on a regular kind of traditional media. What's out there? First off, what do you think of that? And also, whichever one you want to comment on, what's out there for the younger artists who aren't U2, who can't command $100 million up front? It's hard to make $100 million on an album,
Yeah.
So what's out there? How does someone conquer the new challenges of the marketplace, because you can't go out and sell 25 million records.
Right. And I think that's once again what I was saying about reinvention. Trying to sell records today is very different from how records were sold even only 20 years ago.
Sure.
And 40 years ago. And it's rapidly changing. The industry is, in fact, being turned on its head with MP3s.
Sure.
And CDs,
essentially going away.
Yeah, I was going to say the cassettes have gone away.
Physical format in general.
Vinyl records have pretty much disappeared. And then CDs, yes, are now leaving and will be gone really soon.
Yeah. I mean, there is a little bit of a resurgence in vinyl just from a nostalgia standpoint.
But that's all it is. It won't be the sales.
Yeah.
But, I mean, most people don't even have space for it in their homes now.
Yep.
Most people don't own a turntable.
Right.
No, but you can own the album you want instantly on your telephone.
Yes.
So why would you have space?
Why would you even make space for it?
Why would you even walk over to a turntable?
Right.
Yeah.
When you can just push a button.
Just
on
press
your
a
phone.
button and get in your car and take off and take your music wherever you go.
And have it be digital, not not a piece of metal dragging across a piece of vinyl.
Right, which could be scratched or, whatever, something like that. You have to go buy it again. So the mentality is different, and I think the smart person is going to look at all of that and think, okay, how can I market myself today? The first thing I think a person should do, a young person, is learn to make good music in the first place. And I think all music is great, or at least the inspiration of it probably starts from a great place. But you want to make music that's going to last, not a song that's so trendy that it only is here today and gone tomorrow. You want to make the kind of music, at least just make sure that you have quality control, and that when you play it, it sounds good, it feels good, it's a great song. Have it mixed properly by an engineer that really knows what they're doing, instead of some guy that tells you that he knows what he's doing, but he doesn't. And so once you have a good product in the first place, and then that way, again, you stand the chances of making sure that, again, 20 years from now, 10 years from now, your product still will be relevant, possibly, or marketable. And so from there, you got to think about how you're going to get it out there. It's really tough. You can't get the record deal that you would have gotten 20 years ago just based on the merit of your talent. Now it's about, do you have a following already?
Yeah.
So I think if you're an artist trying to make it today, you need to think about how you're going to market it once it's done. You want to be able to, I don't know if you're a musician or you might be a rapper, whatever it is, make sure that you have some kind of performance that's decent, so that people, when they see you, they go, whoa, that was really cool, and they're talking about it. You know what I mean? Because you're always going to be your own best calling card. When you go to perform, people will see you and be like, wow, man, that band was great, or that guy or gal was great. And you want to be the thing they're talking about. And so once you get that going, you're creating a following locally or whatever for yourself. And what happens is the word of mouth gets around, and then the next thing you know, people want you to come do your show. People are buying your song and downloading it and telling their friends about it. You become the talk of the town, if you will. And from that, you can create a hype so that the record labels will hear about you and then want to sign you. They probably won't just sign you if you knock on their door. Once upon a time, you used to be able to knock on the door of a record label and somebody would come outside, or they would invite you in, because it was like no big deal. The world was differently. They would have you in the office, and you said you had a good song, and you might not even have a record or whatever, a recording of it. You might just have an acoustic guitar. They would allow you to sit down.
You walked in with a guitar on your back.
On your back, and you played it for them, and they liked to hear. Or if you had a tape,
and a demo tape,
it was usually a horrible recording, but then there was somebody that would listen and go, you know what, I know that's horrible, but we'll record you and we'll make it right.
I can hear what's in there.
I can hear it. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm liking you, but today you better have a product, like I said, that's good, and not even just the recording, but have a performance that's good too, because they're going to want to see it.
So the industry has changed. The way that we receive music has changed. The way that consumers spend money on an entertainer has changed. But what has not changed are the same things that you said were different about Hammer when he came to you, which were that he had a performance. he had a whole package that was different from everybody else's. It was a plan. I mean, his first album was called Let's Get It Started, and he as much as you were instrumental in shaping the albums that came after that, he at least knew that this was the beginning of something, and that he wanted to grow into something, and they had an idea of what it was he wanted to grow into, and that part of it has not changed.
Right. Yeah, he created a sound that was so different. You and I both had the same experience. So I'm like, I don't know what to make, and to me, it sounded like the Fat Albert Band. Like, there were so many things being hit in the background. I'm like, I can't even make sense of this, but I had to reckon with it. I couldn't just dismiss it because there was something in it, and I had to listen to it and be immersed in it because it made you move, you know? And that's not changed. If you can do that, you've got something.
So, who do you see nowadays who makes you excited about music that may be just coming out now?
Probably my favorite artist currently, and there's a few really, really talented individuals. I'm not going to lie. There's a lot that come out now, and I'm like, whoa, I like that.
Well, there's so much you have to sift through.
All colors of the rainbow. I think there's so many people that are talented in so many genres. But sadly, we have so much to sift through.
Right.
There's almost too much. Before, the industry was somewhat, it policed itself.
Right.
And there was a floodgate, basically, that was being monitored so that not too much would come through at a time. You know what I mean?
Well, it's funny. So the flip side of you could knock on the door of a record label was that they would get talent and develop it. And you couldn't just have a record. Nowadays, if you want to make a record, you can just make one.
You can just make one at home and get it out there. That's true.
And so now, just about anybody could have a record.
But you're lacking the mentoring.
Right. 30 years ago, if you wanted to get a record, there was a process.
And you're right. And you're lacking the mentoring, and you're also lacking the A&R process.
Right.
Motown had a phenomenal A&R process where he had, Berry Gordy had a plethora of producers under him after a while, and they were all great. Yeah. But still, a hit is a hit, and not every song is a hit. Right. And so they would be in the studio working on these songs, and then once they were all done, they would have this big committee meeting at the end of the week, and he would listen to everybody's song. And all of the people in this round table, if you will, would sit and listen. And if they heard a hit, then they would support that. If they didn't have a hit, they would tell them, you need to go back in, or this is what you need to do. And so we're lacking that today. There's
the power of no.
Yeah.
Some people need to get told no sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. Or go back and fix it. You know, this is okay, but, you can make it better. And so what we have today, to answer your question, there's so many artists, and not everybody, in my opinion, is good, but there are a lot of talented individuals out there. But one of the ones that really sticks out for me, and I call him new because he's newish, but he's only been around for a few years, even though he's been trying to get into the industry now for 15 years or more. But it would be Bruno Mars. I think he is my favorite, and the reason why I say it is because he's true to the art. He respects the music. He's certainly of the new generation, this whole new vibe of music. He gets all of that, and he is that. Yep. But at the same time, he respects the old, and he brings just enough of that into what he's doing that he makes it cool. But at the same time, I think people our age and older really respect him as well. Bruno Mars is a multi-instrumentalist, and he's a fantastic singer, and he's an entertainer. He gets on stage, he'll just pick up the microphone and wow you just with what he's singing, but then he might put the mic down or on the stand and then start stepping. He's doing choreography and all of these things. So for me, he's probably my favorite artist, and that's really who I'm paying attention to. And I've seen him on stage, and, his father is an amazing percussionist, and he passed that down to Bruno, who is a fantastic drummer.
And his brother. And his brother plays drums in his band.
His brother is his drummer, and his brother is a more than fantastic drummer.
Yeah,
he's
a monster.
Is a monster. He's really probably one of the best drummers in the game today.
Yep.
Wow. I will call him that. I saw Bruno live a few times, and I noticed the drummer looked like
and
him.
he's no joke on the drums himself, Bruno Mars.
Well, I was saying, yeah, he's a drummer, and he's a pianist, and he plays guitar and bass as well. I mean,
he probably doesn't remember a time when he wasn't in front of a large crowd entertaining.
Right, all his life,
really
so early,
his life, he was pretty much molded for it. So just being a fan of Prince, I think I really like someone that's all around, and so for me, he's someone that stands out. I can't really just say Taylor Swift is the one for me right now. You know, she's a pretty girl, but I don't know that she has really cut her teeth yet and made herself that seasoned musician that's really gonna impress me. But even though I'm impressed by her success. I really am, and I pay attention to that. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. My daughter took me to a Lil Wayne concert, and I was blown away by how much they love him. You know, Lil Wayne didn't blow me away, but the kids in the audience blew me away by how much they loved. I mean, they knew every one of the lyrics. The entire audience, the whole audience was singing all of the verses
lyric
to his songs and the choruses, just like from beginning to end. They knew every lyric. I don't even see that in like a Michael Jackson show. People sing along, but sometimes they stop.
Right.
In this show,
I'm not. You know what? Not coming up with the second verse to "Man in the Mirror."
Yeah, me neither. I'm not doing it.
I might be crying by then.
Yeah.
I'm crying. Speaking to me.
So I'm just looking for that in these new artists. I'm looking to see what they're gonna do. But my favorite would have to be Bruno Mars. So.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to give Bruno Mars a second look because he doesn't move me. But I respect that, and especially your opinion matters to me too. And people like Taylor Swift are clearly talented, but for me, she's stuck in the pop era. Singing about boyfriends, singing about who she's mad at, and I need her to do something else to move me. And I don't know what that thing is, but
well, as she matures, she'll
right,
figure
that's
out
what I
what
need.
that
I need some maturity,
and,
probably, in her craft.
Yeah,
and it's
I'm rooting for her.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you know what. Let me just say, and I don't want to turn into like I'm defending Bruno, but let me just say on that note, I think I'm also impressed at his behind the scenes work. Like a lot of people don't know that he co-wrote the "Forget Me" song or "Forget You" song by CeeLo.
Yeah, by CeeLo.
He co-wrote that.
Okay.
And he also co-wrote.
He co-wrote a lot of things over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
He's been the co-writer on an awful lot of stuff.
Yeah, like the "You Spin Me Round" song by Flo Rida.
Right.
He co-wrote that. And, just a ton of hits. You're right. He's either written all of it or part of a lot of hits behind the scenes. So I respect
Well, before
that.
he broke as a solo artist, that was his living. He was just writing for other people and doing
a lot of
well.
people. Missy Elliott came up like that. And then Lady Gaga as well. She was a songwriter for a lot of people behind the scenes. She would write the songs and she would demo it, but, it would not be put out. And Akon, I should say, knew about her, and I think he signed her as a writer, and eventually he agreed to put her out as an artist because of that. She couldn't get arrested by the labels, and Akon took a chance on her.
Well, he did pretty well.
He did fantastically between T-Pain and her.
Sure.
Yeah. Great success.
What you're talking about too, that collaboration, that seems to be more of the modern way of getting through that A&R process. You bring your social network in and you collide it with whoever, Pharrell's, and that expands your music into that circle. And then you go do it again with somebody else, and you can mix genres. It's fine.
Yes.
Eminem will work with anybody who's got talent. He doesn't care. And then you get a boost from that. And that seems to be kind of, from my angle, that seems to be how the young artist has to try to do it, is to understand how to create a crowd. Get beyond your family and people still like your music, then you probably have a shot.
There is an availability that there didn't used to be, because I know that, you, James, had listened to everybody. I can throw out a name from, any genre, and your familiarity is always there. And that's the fun of music, but a lot of people didn't get that. I mean, back in the 60s and 70s, sure, you had a lot of songwriting teams, but you didn't see Ashford and Simpson and Burt Bacharach and Hal David writing together.
Right.
You know, there were labels and genres. They had their stables, and they stuck to their own, and they worked within their own circle. But you didn't see a collaboration that went across genre.
Or if Eddie Van Halen's on Beat It, it's Beat It featuring Eddie Van Halen. Like
he wasn't invited into the room to collaborate on the album.
Right.
It was just
come do this.
Hey, this is Quincy.
Right.
Will you come down because we need this, and nobody does it better than you.
They hang up the phone.
Right.
There'll be a limo outside your house in about 15 minutes. We need you to come out now and play this part. Yeah, I mean, it's just a very different game today. But I think you're right. Collaboration is great. I like to just go back to artists. I think, and I call him an artist, but he's a producer, phenomenal. Pharrell Williams, I think, impresses me a lot.
Yeah.
Man,
his catalog of songs is really, really vast.
Have you watched his show on the internet?
No, I haven't.
His show is terrific. Man.
Really?
It's called
So
Artist
good.
Talk.
Really?
You as a producer and everything, you need to watch the one between him and Daniel Lanois and how they both come at things totally different. And yet they're both nod their head going, yeah, I need some of that. Like they are feeding off each other, and it's just fantastic.
Yeah.
It really is. It's excellent.
Wow, I want to check it out. What network? Not that we're trying to do a commercial for that, but what network?
Well, we'll talk about that off the air because our listeners can Google that. But so we've been at it for well over an hour.
Yeah, that's true.
And I really don't know I can't think of anything I want to edit out. So here's what I would like to do. I would like to close on that note. Actually, I have one more question, then we'll close on that. But can we do a part 2 of this?
Man, please.
Yeah.
Oh man, anytime.
Okay.
Anytime. You guys are family, so
we're gonna hold you to that, and I really appreciate you being our inaugural guest, man.
Killing it.
I love
it.
The bar is way high.
Killing it.
I love it. You guys are a great show, and you've always had a great show. But I think this new page, this new chapter, is fantastic.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the final question. Given the cross-genre possibilities, if there was a guy that you could work with on a song in a completely different genre than you have come up in, which is really a lot of anything between hip hop and funk and R&B, but if you could reach across whatever imaginary aisle exists and grab somebody else and say, "Hey, let's do something together," who would it be?
It's funny. A question like that, I could give you 20 or 50 names, but probably.
How about just a couple of the ones that come to your head?
Honestly, I'm really. It would first be Sting. I think he's probably my favorite artist ever.
Wow.
Because of just the fact that he's an artist, but he's a songwriter. He's written pretty much every song that you've heard him sing.
Yeah.
He's, almost to a song, he's written it. But yet he's this phenomenal musician and just probably one of the best to ever do it, ever.
Ever.
Yeah. There's no dissent here. We love Sting.
Yep.
Police music doesn't even have legs. It's got wheels.
Yeah.
It's never going to stop.
Yep.
But someone that he's connected with as well. They were produced by the same producer for a time, and that would be Phil Collins. Though I would love to work with Phil Collins. I think he's, again, he is drums. He's not a drummer. I think he and drums are one and the same.
Wow. And
he's one of the best drummers ever on the planet, and also a phenomenal singer-songwriter, and I would love to work with him.
Yeah, he can write it too.
He can sing it, write
Who's the common producer between the two of them?
Hugh Padgham? Hugh Padgham.
Yeah.
Hugh Padgham produced Genesis and the Police at the same time. He was working on all of their phenomenal stuff.
Yeah.
And so I mean,
like the popular Genesis, not the music nerd Genesis, but the popular Genesis.
But then Phil Collins later borrowed him, and then he produced a lot of stuff with Phil Collins as well, the solo stuff that he was doing.
Which was all excellent.
But he really reshaped the Police because he stepped in to do Ghost in the Machine, which was a huge turning point.
He's a producer engineer.
Yeah.
And so he's somebody I would really enjoy working with as well. But as far as artists, man, there's so many.
So we got Sting, we got Phil Collins. Boy, that's that's rarefied air.
Yeah. But I mean, there's just so many. I think there's so many really, really talented musicians. And I'm a student of music. I listen, as you said, I do pay attention to all genres of music, not just one. My mother had me listening as a child to everything, all the folk stuff that was coming out. My mother.
Yeah, I can't take you by surprise with anything, man.
Yeah, my mother and father really. We call them closet hippies. You didn't know by looking at them, but if you're around my parents, you would see that I call them closet hippies. And so we got to listen to everything: blues, folk, all the rock stuff, country as well, and then funk stuff. I grew up listening to that, the dance music, so I love it all.
Sure.
There's just so many that I would love to work with, and Quincy Jones is someone that I would just want to be around him. You know
just
what I mean?
Witness his process.
Just to sit next to him in the studio. You know what? I lost the Grammy to Quincy Jones, and I swear,
not so bad.
I swear, I'm honored by that though. But
that's like, man, I was dancing with this girl and I knew I had her, and then Brad Pitt walked in.
Yeah,
it's all right. Doggone it. It's all right. What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? Just walk away and let it happen, But it was we got nominated, and producer of the year, James Earley, Felton Pilot, Quincy Jones, and like 2 other people, and of course Quincy took it.
Yeah.
But it's Quincy. What do you do?
He's got like 80 of them things.
Yeah.
Oh, he's got. Remember we were talking about.
We
the other
did.
day?
We looked at stats about Quincy Jones, and it was just staggering.
Like, there's no way he's got them displayed.
The number of
There's
Grammys
so
that he had, it was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But you're right. That's not so bad. And when you get the nod, and people say it's just an honor to be nominated. Mm-hmm. That's true, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
Especially when your company is Quincy Jones. Like this year, this piece of work that I produced is up there being looked at as being as good as what Quincy produced. And that year, what did Quincy produce?
I think it was his Secret Garden album.
Okay.
That's what it was.
You lost a Grammy to Quincy Jones.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to be nominated. But, of course, my music, Hammer has won a lot of Grammys with my music.
Yeah.
So, in that way, I'm a Grammy winner anyway. So, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
A lot of awards, actually, have been won. But, I mean, it's great. And I continue to be a student of this industry. So, that's the reason why I would love to just be with so many and learn from them and, try to help others as well.
Oh, fantastic.
Well, we'll do a part 2.
Oh, I want to do part 7.
Yeah, man, really.
Yeah, you're always invited to
always. Come in. Yeah, you're just always invited to, come and eat or whatever.
Well, next time I'll come back and interview you guys.
All right. Yeah. Shoot. Hell yeah.
It'll be my turn.
Anytime. Ladies and gentlemen, our privilege to have the great James Earley. Thank you, James. I love you, man.
Love you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. I can't wipe the smile off my face.
Man.